and we're welcoming Denise back.
Well, that is certainly a hard act to follow. Tony said so much that it encapsulates what's the energy and the spirit of this place, and reminds me how grateful learn and grow with the center. It's just, that energy is always here. And thank you, Tony, for your great acknowledgement of that. I'm going to take you through a little history of the Center's publications. This is in honor of Dr. Schaefer's passion for books and both of our honorees' contributions to the Center's publications over so many years. As Becky mentioned earlier, and as many of you will recall, for many years the Center published what came to be called the Archive. It started out curiously called the Center for Creative Photography. This is the first issue, and what you see on the right is the first page, which is a letter by Harold Jones, our first director, where he introduces the first issue. And Harold tells us in this letter that each issue will be an effort to present information which is not generally available and to our knowledge has never been reproduced previously. Since that first issue of the Archive, that has been the spirit of CCP publications. The impetus to share what has not been seen before. To introduce the unknown or to present new discoveries and insights about what we perceive as familiar. To revisit a seminal exhibition from a fresh perspective. To make connections and to find context. And to show us the less familiar work by artists that we think we know. This well-worn volume, affectionately known as the Conger Book, is still in high demand. It's an inventory of all the Center's Edward Weston prints, and it remains the definitive reference for scholars and CCP staff. As you can see, it's well used. Books the Center has published the books published by the Center have approached the collections from many different viewpoints, but always with the goal of showing the reader something they hadn't seen before, or helping us to see or think in a different way. The 1989 book, Decade by Decade, examines photography's first century through essays from 8 esteemed photography historians, including Naomi Rosenblum and Nathan Lyons. The plates in the second half of the book form a magnificent showcase of the Center's fine print collection from 1894 through 1980. Of course, the publication program has been punctuated with an outstanding series of monographs and exhibition catalogs, often with the voices of curators, but also in less conventional formats where a living artist speaks directly through the book, collaborating fully in its creation, as with the 1984 paired set by Frederick Sommer, Words and Images. For this wonderfully creative 1994 exhibition, truly did my camera record their faces, Dr. Schaefer paired his collection of anonymous 19th century cabinet cards with an exceptionally popular book of poems by Edgar Lee Masters, Spoon River Anthology, published in 1915. The poems are in the voices of residents of the fictional Midwestern town of Spoon River and seem to match perfectly with the portraits of the same era. All purchased by John Schaefer, incidentally, for under $5. Original sources, as Becky mentioned, was an overview of CCP collections and featured archives. Winogrand, 1964, by Trudy Wilderstack, looked at that one pivotal year through the eyes of Gary Winogrand as he traveled across America on a Guggenheim Fellowship. There are no essays in this book. The artist and the times speak to us. As stated in Trudy's simple dedication, his photographs were enough. In the mid-2000s, CCP published Harry Callahan, the photographer at work. It incorporated a significant amount of archive material revealing Callahan's nuanced vision and his highly innovative processes. This volume on John Gutmann shed light on another very important archive and highly creative mind. Brett Salveson's New Topographics revisited and examined a groundbreaking exhibition from 1975. As you can see, the Center's publications have used the collections as an entry point for so many lines of inquiry and exploration, sometimes guided by the discerning interpretation of photo historians, and sometimes by the artists themselves. There are situations, however, where it's most appropriate to present a thing as itself without explanation or interpretation. What you're looking at here is an enormous 2-volume book dummy for a seminal work by W. Eugene Smith. Recognized by numerous book and photography historians as absolutely groundbreaking, it is unfinished and unpublished. The original object is seldom seen due to its fragility. The publication project produced this, a painstaking facsimile of the original 2 volumes, not full of the breathtaking master prints that Smith is so well known for, but faithful reproductions of the fading pages that represented the concept and the rhythm of the essay. We can feel what Smith was trying to do with this essay and imagine what he might have had to say about the times. The idea, incidentally, is that because it was unfinished, to publish it in any other way would be to make a leap and finish it for him, which was not something that we could do. And thanks to brilliant work by archivist Leslie Squires, there is a volume of reference images identifying every one of over 400 images by place, date, and series. Up next, in the spring of 2018, the University of Texas Press and CCP will publish The Street Philosophy of Gary Winogrand by the well-known author and critic Jeff Dyer. This is the result of a collaboration where Dyer, who had written on Winogrand in the past, spent time at CCP and immersed himself in Winogrand's images, ultimately selecting 100 photographs and writing 100 accompanying essays to be presented side by side. This will be out in the spring. And in closing, I'd like to tell you about our next book.
Sorry.
The working title is The Lives of Pictures, 40 Writers on the Collection at the Center for Creative Photography. Our intention is to invite a wide variety of people who have worked with the collections to choose a print, an archive object, or a pairing of the two, and write about what is important, intriguing, or simply beautiful about that object. This will be an intimate approach to a highlights catalog, populated by classic photographs, and certain to contain interesting things that we've never seen before, which is completely in keeping with that original intention.
Welcome, Dr. Kate Palmer Alberts.
So I'm going to say a few words about the significance and meaning of publications from my vantage point. And I think the two sort of salient parts of that vantage point that are important to articulate here. One is my role as a professor of art history in the School of Art across the way, where I've been working with students, graduates, and undergraduates for 10 years now. Coming over here to the center, reading, of course, many publications. And then the other important role, vantage point, is my work as a scholar, as a writer, as a researcher with a specialty in history and theory of photography, and in particular contemporary practices. So I thought a good way to bring together those two vantage points for this audience and this purpose would be to talk about a graduate seminar that I'm working on right now with master's and PhD students in art history and art studio programs. And one of the things that we're doing in this seminar is really centrally tied to the question of publications and what their future might be, how we can reimagine objects and in taking advantage of the kinds of possibilities that are open in the realm of publications now. And so we've started with sort of central question, this launching point for this class in many ways was a publication that I'm sure many of you in the audience are quite familiar with. And these are the 2 volumes of Edward Weston's daybooks, published in 1961 and 1966. And for those of you who aren't familiar with these books, they are a compendium of Weston's personal journals that he kept largely in the 1920s and 1930s as he traveled throughout California into Mexico and recorded over that time his first-person narrative of his experiences professionally and personally. And this is a publication that has been tremendously important to so many Weston enthusiasts, to Weston scholars, to lovers of photography, to people who want insight into this kind of thinking. And the book, as they were published, they look as books do, the kind of print volumes that we know and love, filled with words and images that are transcribed from the original pages. You saw one that Becky showed at the very beginning. So one of the central questions of this seminar was, how might we envision, how might we imagine another way of understanding what these daybooks are, taking into account all of the options that are available to us now in the year 2017 in the realm of publications. And one of the really central things that the students were fascinated by, of course, you know that the daybooks as original objects are housed here in the archive. It's about 1,800 pages, handwritten. And you see immediately that the object quality of these pages conveys an extraordinary amount of information that you don't get in the typewritten transcript of them. So one of the things that the students have been thinking about is how, ironically, in this time of online and digital technology, can those technologies bring audiences, bring viewers closer, actually, to the original object? And how can you do this more efficiently in an online way than you can in print form, more efficiently, et cetera? And the other things that they've thought about are, how could you connect some of the words, the topics that Weston is talking about, the people who he's interacting with, the images that he's describing, how can you network those in an online way so that those images, information about those people would be readily available as you were reading through his handwritten pages? How could you respond to the information that you see in these pages where you see Weston hesitating, things he's crossing out or literally cutting out, in a way to think about what those hesitations mean about making these personal thoughts very public as they move forward towards publications. Another student thought of an idea of making a podcast that would come out of the daybooks, where you would have an audio component of passages read and then a conversation among artists or scholars or experts in other fields now that discuss things that were relevant. So really, there's been such a tremendous expansion of the possibilities creatively and dynamically in terms of thinking through what even a publication now can consist of, that it's really quite an exciting time to be thinking about the possibilities of publications. We think always of publications as communicating through their content, but they also communicate so profoundly through their forms. And those forms that we have available to us now for publications can reach different audiences. It might be audiences who would hear a podcast, or audiences who would read a blog post, or audiences who would pay attention to an online network diagram in a way that they might not respond to a beautiful print publication, which there's a robust audience for already. And that really brings me to the last thing that I want to say as I reflected about what I thought the significance and meaning of publications can be. As I thought about sort of the last 15 years of my own involvement in publications and the ways I've tried to write as an author and in the ways I've read as a reader, and what a sort of central thing that came out of that thinking was thinking about the possibility of publications in a very profound way to create communities. And we don't often frame publications that way, I don't think, but both for authors, both for contributors, but also for readers, the publications can be a way that you extend the dialogue, you extend a sense of shared conversation around ideas and images that different audiences love. Maybe they're undergraduate students, maybe they're photography enthusiasts across the globe, maybe they're scholars and specialists. These are all different audiences who can be reached through different forms, and those forms that we have now can create community in a really special and remarkable way. So I think that's something to really aim for and think about as we move forward with publications. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate.